If the old-fashioned ideal of the dispassionate journalist is dead, 2015 might be the year that killed it. Over the past 12 months, the media chose sides on a bevy of hot-button issues, making it abundantly clear that these days, just the facts doesn't cut it. Adam has more.
After Donald Trump proposed a ban on Muslims entering the U.S., Tom Brokaw chose to report and decide.
Paranoia, overriding reason.
And then there was Univision's Jorge Ramos, who was booted from a Trump presser for asking a question that was more like a statement.
You cannot deport 11 million people.
Journalists also chose sides on a bunch of big causes in 2015, with on-campus sexual assault topping the list. After Rolling Stone's Sabrina Erdely embraced the tale of an alleged rape victim at UVA, the story fell apart due to a lack of vetting.
Editors authorized Erdely to tell Jackie they would stop trying to find her alleged attacker.
Despite that debacle, the media took up the cause of campus sex assault again, with CNN running a troublingly soft documentary on the topic. Here's Emily reading a producer's pitch to one interviewee.
This is a film project very much in the corner of advocacy for victims.
And then there was the loaded subject of gun violence. After a series of mass shootings, the New York Times used its first front-page editorial in nearly a century to call for more gun control.
There was a decision of the publisher,
No doubt.
not of the news department.
Also turning journalists into advocates, the Black Lives Matter movement, where detachment was in short supply.
You are playing with fire and becoming your own worst enemy.
Talented organizers and leaders and activists.
They're a hate group, and I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to put them out of business.
And we can't forget Caitlyn Jenner, whose transition from Bruce turned reporters into cheerleaders,
a brave Olympian transformed,
making her the perfect poster girl for the modern media.
Madam, this is a little different than not covering both sides of global warming and embracing the science of something. This is kind of like putting aside another argument and embracing it because it's a cause that you feel is right or just.
In some cases it is, although I think if you have someone like Tom Brokaw weighing in on Trump the way he did, I mean, that was a well-argued case against Trump and Trump's rhetoric that he made.
Presented as a commentary.
Presented as a commentary,
okay.
yes. No, people knew, if you're a savvy news consumer, you would know that that wasn't a straight report. And I do think the public is a lot savvier than we tend to give them credit for, and I think they know by this point that those of us who work in this field are not opinionless beings, but that we have opinions just like they do. I don't have a problem, maybe because I come from an all-weekly background. I worked with Dan at the Phoenix, as John did too. I don't have a problem with opinions leaking out. I think the problem is when you are intellectually dishonest and say you attack a politician from one party for doing something and give a politician from another party a pass for doing the same thing. Opinions themselves don't bug me that much.
You know, the whole notion of objectivity was originally intended to mean an objective pursuit of the truth. And over time, it became kind of a mindless balancing well, we've got somebody saying the sun rises in the east, we better get somebody to say the sun rises in the west. So I have no problem with journalists trying to pursue the truth as best as they can. But, advocacy sometimes, for people like us, or I'll say for people like me, some of this may seem like a no-brainer, like the New York Times editorial on gun control. And then you find out this week, there's a new poll showing that support for a ban on assault rifles is at an all-time low. And I'm certainly not saying that we need to reflect public opinion at all times, but it just goes to show you that when you do take an advocacy position, sometimes you find out how out of touch with public opinion you really are.
I think the issue for me is that there are opinion journalists. These are people who take the facts of the day, the events of many days, pull that together and put their opinion on it. That is perfectly legitimate. What we get a little dicey about is when you have someone who reports every day, straight journalism, this happened, and then from nowhere, oh, and by the way, I hate that this happened. Wait a minute, that's not your job. There are some people standing next to you, perhaps that's their job, and I don't think it's always clear to viewers or to readers that separation is there.
But there's something else here. This disturbing trend, I think, to grasp and believe one side of an issue without really listening to the other side. And we saw that in the campus rape story. Not that it's not a problem, but really being selective in what they were listening to.
Well, part of that issue is, as we know, are the statistics and where they come from and how they have been interpreted. And so on its face, if you looked at those statistics, I think the way it was reported and then opined on wasn't so far off. If after you do some other stories and then we have that bogus thing that comes out from Rolling Stone, which is not helpful in a case that's very, very real for a lot of people, then you say, well, wait a minute, where am I basing this on? And that changes it all. So I think from the beginning, maybe we're back to what we always talk about here, is that no, do not respond instantly, wait a minute, and see what unfolds.
I think the changing media environment has injected a degree of confusion about and blurring of the lines of these roles that we're talking about. That is a confusion on the part of the journalists themselves and their editors, and I'm sure of the consuming public. I think, and I believe strongly, there is a place for straight-ahead, fact-based who, what, when, where, and why journalism. I think there's a place for advocacy or analysis like what I do. I'd like to think that a fusion of the two is going to survive and prosper. But, if I go on TV and say, here's the latest example of Donald Trump's penchant for serial lying, which he continues to do even after he's called on the facts, you can write me off as you want as biased and anti-Trump. I'm telling you, that's fact-based analysis.
Exactly.
Right.